Today I want us to talk about the presidency. The presidency is a highly contested office all over the world. In Africa, it is a do or die game. Becoming a president in the world and becoming a president in Africa is like winning a lottery. And there have been several questions asked about the presidency. And one of the primary questions which has been asked about the presidency is the presidential term limit. When I talk about the presidential term limit, it defines the number of years or the number of terms that a president is to be in office. Very many democracies across the world institute or work with the 5-year term. A president is allowed to be in office for only 5 years, and if re-elected, is allowed to be in office for 2 terms, 2 consecutive terms, that is 10 years. Now, in this discussion, we are going to work with 10 years. A president is always allowed to be a president in a democratic country for 10 years, that is 2 5-year consecutive terms. In the case of the United States, it will be 8 years because they have 2 consecutive 4-year terms. But there has been a trend which has been going on all over the world where leaders change the constitutions once in power for them to stay in office. In fact, there have been leaders all over the world that have been in power for more than 40 years. And I mean more than 40 years. If we use our 10-year rule, then it will mean that this person has been president for 8 terms, if I'm not wrong. 8, because 40 divided by 5, it will be 8. 8 terms. He has been elected as president for 8 terms. I made a list of presidents all over the world from their various countries and the number of years that they have ruled. Topping my list is the Equatorial Guinea president Teodoro Obiang Nguema, who has been president of the country for 44 years since 1979. I have Paul Biya in my list, who has been president of Cameroon for 41 years. I have Hun Sen of Cambodia, who was president for 39 years. I have Yoweri Museveni, who has been the president of Uganda for 37 years since 1986. I have Jose Eduardo dos Santos, who was the president of Angola for 38 years. I have King Mswati III, who is the king of Eswatini, formerly Swaziland, for 37 years since 1986. I have Ali Khamenei, that was the president who is popularly known as Ayatollah of Iran, was the president of Iran for 34 years. I have Denis Sassou-Congo, who was the president of Congo. I don't know whether he still is the president of Congo for 36 years since 1979. Idriss Deby was the president of Chad for 31 years from 1990 to 2021. I have our favorite president, who I did a video about him, about his speech during the Africa Climate Change Summit held in Kenya, Nairobi. Isias Afewerki, that is the president of Eritrea for 30 years and is still the current president since 1991. I have the president of Albania, ENVER Xoxha, who was the president for 40 years. The president and the supreme leader of North Korea, Kim Sung-tu, who was the president of the supreme leader of North Korea for 46 years. Then I have Chiang Kai-shek, who was the president of Taiwan for 47 years. I have our favorite African president, that is Muammar Gaddafi, who was the president of Libya for 42 years. Then I have Omar Bongo Ondimba, the president of Gabon for 41 years. Then I have the late Robert Mugabe, who was the president of Zimbabwe for 37 years. I have Fidel Castro, who was the president of Cuba for 49 years. I have, let's say, three. There was the king of Lesotho for 27 years. Then I have Ismail Omar Guelleh, who was the president of Djibouti for 24 years. Then I have another favorite African president, that is Paul Kagame, who has been the president of Rwanda for 23 years since 2000. Then I have Gnassingbé Eyadema, who was the president of Togo for 38 years from 1967 to 2005. I have Evo Morales, who was the president of Bolivia for 14 years from 2006 to 2019. I have our favorite president again, Vladimir Putin, who has been the president of Russia for 23 years since 2000 and is currently serving his 6th term and waiting for the 7th term until 2036. By then, he will be 86 years old. I have the president of Kazakhstan, Nursultan Nazarbayev, who was the president of Kazakhstan for 29 years. Now, that is just a short list of some presidents who have been in office for more than 2 decades. I have given you in this list that we have the likes of Théodore Obiang Nguema, who has been president for Equatorial Guinea for 44 years. I come to the question. I ask the question: for how long should one be a president? How many terms should a president serve? I started this video by saying that in most democracies, a president is allowed to serve for 5 years, that is 1 term. And if he is a favorite, if is re-elected or she is re-elected, that president is allowed to serve for 10 years, that is 2 5-year consecutive terms. Using that approach, it means that the maximum number of years that a president is allowed to serve is 10 years. But here is a case when presidents serve for 15 years, serve for 20 years, 30 years, 40 years, and some about to click 50 years. I ask the question, for how long should a president serve? How long should a president serve? When I did a video about Isias Afewerki, that is the president of Eritrea, I got some very interesting comments. And one of the comments was from an Eritrean who accused the president of infringing on the people's rights. He accused the president of ruling the country with an iron rod. In fact, this individual was, I want to say, disappointed with that video that I made. He was disappointed because I was shedding a positive light of the president, and yet his experience with the president is a different one. I come to the question again: for how long should a president serve? How long? In this context, I have said that we are going to use the 10-year rule. That means that we agree that a president should serve for 10 years maximum. But there is a problem. There is a very big problem. Presidents have been serving for 20 years, presidents have been serving for 30 years, and presidents have been serving for 40 years. In my view, and according to my own understanding, I believe that a president should serve for a maximum of 5 years. 5 years is enough for a person, a leader, a president to deliver for its people. A president serving for 5 years, that is enough time to deliver. You remember, and you may know that these presidents, they extend their term limits. They tend to believe that extending term limits gives them the opportunity, let me say, to extract and manipulate resources. Those who serve for 10 years and those who serve for 15 years, 20 years and the rest, after serving for 5 years, they tend to, let me say, to do some incomplete jobs for them to come back to the citizens and ask for a renewed opportunity to complete their jobs. There is also another growing problem, and this growing problem stems from the cases of Uganda, the cases of Libya, and other countries. Libya was under Muammar Gaddafi, and we have said that Muammar Gaddafi was the president of Libya for 42 years. During this 42-year period, Libya was one of the economically viable countries. Libya was developed, Libya was stable, and Libya was performing, was one of the greatest African countries, if not one of the world's greatest countries. And yet, the West labeled Gaddafi as a dictator. I hope now you see a problem. Some of these leaders who serve for a very long time, who might also be labeled as dictators, they perform. I have given the example of Muammar Gaddafi. I am referring to the context of economic performance and social performance. The lives of Libyans improved during the rule of Muammar Gaddafi, during these 42 years. But there is also a dilemma in some countries where these presidents rule for a very long time, yet the lives of the people still dilapidate. The lives of the people do not change for the positive. Now that is where the problem of extending term limits comes. A president extends his term limits or her term limits, and yet the lives of the people do not improve. In Africa, the likes of Yoweri Museveni has been labeled as dictators. The likes of Rwanda's Paul Kagame has been labeled as dictators. Robert Mugabe was labeled as a dictator before his death. Putin is labeled as a dictator. Now, in this review, I see two competing things. I see two very competing things. One of them is the issue of duration, term limits. How long should a president serve? Another issue is the case of accountability. A president can serve for 5 years and deliver and change the lives of the people, change the face of the country. But another president can serve for 50 years, yet the lives of the people, the face of the country, still remain to be in a negative light. Another president can serve for 40 years and change the lives of the people. And another president can serve for 5 years and still fail to change the lives of the people. This is a process, a competition between presidential term limits and accountability. A president can serve for 5 years and be accountable to the people, change the lives of the people, change the economic scope, the political scope, the social scope of the country. A president can serve for 10 years but still fail to change the scope of the country. And another president can serve for 15 years but manage to change the lives of the people. I still ask the question, for how long should a president serve? In my country, Kenya, today, our new constitution, which was promulgated in 2010, states that a president is allowed to serve for a maximum of 10 years. A maximum of 10 years should be consecutive. 5 years, then re-elected for another 5 years. But as of yesterday, there was a proposal in the House of Representatives, the Senate, suggesting that a president should serve for 7 years. The term limit should be extended from 5 years to 7 years. That means that a president will serve for a maximum of 14 years. For how long should a president serve? For those in Eritrea, I ask the question, for how long should Isias Afewerki be in office? For those in Uganda, I ask the question, for how long should President Museveni be in office? For those in Rwanda, I ask the same question, for how long should the President Paul Kagame be in office? For how long? Because I presented this discussion as a global one. I wanted to get the views from all our viewers, from all those people who engage on this platform. Because the last time I checked, we had contributions from Nairobi, Kenya, from London, from Addis Ababa, Ethiopia, from Toronto, Canada, from Calgary, Canada, from Baltimore, USA, from Seattle, USA, Zurich, Switzerland, New York, that is the United States, Kampala, Uganda, Stockholm, Sweden, Frankfurt, Melbourne, Australia, San Francisco, Dallas, Los Angeles, Tel Aviv, and Kingston, Jamaica. We have viewers from all these places. And now I present the question. In your country, in the context of your country, for how long should your president serve? For how long should your president be in office? What is the recommended number of years that you believe is the best time for a president to deliver? In my view, and what I strongly support, is 5 years. That is one term. 5 years is enough period for a president to deliver. 5 years is enough period for an individual who is committed to changing the lives of the people to deliver. This issue of 10 years, this issue of 6 years, 14 years, 20 years, 30 years, 40 years, I don't support it. An accountable leader, a committed leader, a moral leader, an ethical leader should lead for 5 years. That is one term. Within this period, this person is able to deliver on his or her promises. Beyond 5 years, that can now be considered as a dictatorship. I have said that there is a competition between two strong aspects. The aspect of term limits and the aspect of accountability. There can be a president who leads for 5 years and this president delivers, changes the face of the country. But there is another president who leads for 10 years, 15 years, 14 years, 16 years, 20 years, 30 years, 40 years, 50 years, and this president still doesn't change the lives of the people. This president still fails to change the face of the country. This president still fails to deliver on his or her promises. I close this discussion with this question. In the context of your country and in the context of the global space, for how long should a president serve? How many terms should a president serve? And do you believe in this term limit condition? Those are questions that I need our engagers, the people engaging on this platform, to answer. I kindly request that you submit your responses to this question on the comment section. And until then, I clear this discussion with the strong affirmation that a committed leader, an accountable leader, a moral leader, an ethical leader should serve for only 5 years. That is one term. And this should reiterate to all countries, all governments in the world. I ask my friends from Eritrea, under the rule of Isias Afewerki, for how long should a president serve? And I ask my friends from Uganda, for how long should a president serve? I ask my friends from Kenya, how long should a president serve? Addis Ababa, Ethiopia, how long should that your president serve? What is the recommended number of years? What is the recommended term limits for that president? Please present your views, your responses on the comment section. And I kindly request that you watch this discussion and most importantly, subscribe to this platform. Thank you.